people of the internet. My name is Cassandra, and welcome to Queued, the series where I watch and review all of my favorite TV shows and movies. And you have no idea how much I miss saying that. Hello, everyone. It has been a little while. I've been, not doing so well, and I'm starting to do much better now. So, I'm back, and today we have an exciting one for you guys: the Keys of Marinus, the I want to say fifth serial of the first season of Doctor Who. The episode stars William Hartnell, of course, as the Doctor, William Russell as Ian Chesterton, Jacqueline Hill as Barbara Wright, and Carol Ann Ford as Susan. So, The Keys of Marinus, it was written by Terry Nation, directed by John Gorey, and produced by Verity Lambert. When I started watching it, I don't know why, I just had this dread, I thought it was going to be tedious. That's how I remembered it in my mind. But then, upon watching it, I really had fun. There's so many moving parts, and the story is ever-changing because of the nature of the going to different places to find the keys. It's just really interesting, and I thought it was actually a very fun story arc to watch. The working title for the Keys of Marinus was Planet Marinus, and this story is actually the first story in the series to be written by a returning writer. So it's the first time they had the same writer as before, and this story is one of only 2 stories that Terry Nation has written that doesn't have to do with the Daleks. The other one is one of the Auton stories, but I can't remember which one. I think it's Invasion, but I can't remember. Anyway, this story had a few firsts. This was the first story where they used a model TARDIS to do the fade out of the TARDIS. This is the first time that we go a few episodes without seeing William Hartnell as a Doctor. This is because he had been shooting for 8 months straight at that point, shooting for Doctor Who. So he took a holiday, well earned, I would say, and during that holiday they did a few episodes without him, which originally he was in, but they were rewritten to have them be without him. And honestly, sometimes you see these episodes where it's like the Doctor Light is what a lot of people call it, and it kind of doesn't hold up. But this one, I really say, because we have him strong in the beginning and strong at the end, those episodes in the middle hold up to me. I think it works. The villains of this episode, the Voords, men that are wearing these scuba type suits, they were intended to be like the next Daleks. They were trying to recreate Dalek Mania by creating this villain that people would love and kids would want to see in other media and toys and stuff, but the Voords did not catch on at all. If they wanted to make the Voords a really compelling villain, I think this story actually doesn't lend itself well to that at all, because we only see them in the first and the last episode. All the rest of the episodes are completely different situations with other different people, so it seems like we don't actually learn anything about the Voords, or like why they're there, what their purpose is, like on that planet, or anything, like why they invaded in the first place. We don't find out anything about them, so you don't form a connection. Whereas with the Daleks, you learn that they're these, you really learn about them. They're these cold-hearted, they're machines, they were mutants, and they turned like that, and you kind of form a connection of like pity and disgust at the same time. It's like, oh, they're so evil, like they literally have no good emotions. They've stripped themselves of these good emotions, but it is also pitiable that like they turned into these things and immediately turned themselves into these horrifying things, made for war and only war. Whereas with the Voords, you don't form a connection at all. You don't know what they are. So there is a deleted scene in this episode that happens at the very beginning. So we start off in the TARDIS, and Barbara says that she wishes the TARDIS monitor would be in color. And the doctor says it used to be, and it's broken now. And that's actually why they were in England in the first place, was to go to the BBC to find a fix for the monitor's color. But in the actual episode, all we get is when she says that she wishes it was color, and he says it used to be. In the TARDIS, they land on a beach. They all go out. They're all kind of walking around. They realize there's glass on the beach, and like shards of glass, and that the actual ocean is acid. Few interesting things about this episode: the tank top that Susan wears was actually knit by Carol Ann Ford's mother. Carol Ann Ford did not like the characterization of Susan in this episode, and I have to agree. She actually calls her pathetic. I would say, yeah, I don't know how else to put it that's not kind of rude, but yes, pathetic would be the right word, just because I feel like there are many, many times throughout this story arc where she kind of freaks out about nothing, or she freaks out about things that, like, a 17-year-old wouldn't. Kind of like she would be like 8 or something, and it's like she's a child, but she's not a child, you know? This is the first instance of this is in this episode. Susan takes her shoe off and it falls in the pool, and they don't know it's acid yet. And then the shoe dissolves really quickly, and she's about to put her feet in the water, or the acid as it is, and Ian's like, no, stop. And then she just like cries into Barbara's shoulder, and it's like, well, I mean, that is not an appropriate response to what just happened. The appropriate response would be, oh my god, I almost put my foot in there, like, not, you know, like, it's really weird. Like, she has, and this happens multiple times in this story. Like, she has this over emotional response to things that, like, even the most, I feel like, emotionally irregulated person probably wouldn't have that response. And I'm like, why is she hiding in Barbara's shoulder? Like, a few episodes ago, she saw multiple people die. She was in a cave full of men's bones, and she used the bones to scare the men. She saw a man club another man to death, and she's more scared about her shoe being dissolved than those instances. Like, it's kind of crazy. So anyway, Susan goes back to the TARDIS to get some shoes, and when she comes out, she sees these webbed footprints, so she follows them without telling anyone, which is like peak Doctor Who, like someone's like wandering off. Oh, they always wander off.
Barbara, don't go wandering off, please. I just want to have a look. Don't wander off. It's Jamie here. Don't go wandering off.
Don't go wandering off until I'm certain this place is clear.
Don't go wandering off.
Just one day, maybe. I'm going to meet somebody who gets the whole don't wander off thing.
Every time, it's rule 1, don't wander off. I tell them I do rule 1. She goes wandering off. Parallel world, it's like a gingerbread house.
I'm the Doctor. Do everything I tell you, don't ask stupid questions, and don't wander off.
And Rose, don't go running off!
The Doctor's always saying don't wander off. First rule with him, actually, don't wander off.
Don't wander off. Now, I'm not just saying don't wander off, I mean it. Don't wander off.
The system, while I don't wander off. Rule 1, don't wander off.
That's one of my favorite things, is that never changes. The Doctor, since his first incarnation, has been chastising his companions for wandering off. I love that. I love when something just continues throughout the entire timeline, because it's just such an integral part of the story that they just wander off without telling anyone. So she wanders off. The rest of the crew find this sort of one-person submarine, and they investigate inside and find a wetsuit, which they realize, oh, the person who was in this suit must have got dissolved in acid because there's a tear in the suit, and that's why there's no one in the suit. And it's kind of weird because later the Vords, they're like walking around, they all look like that. And it's like, are they all wearing suits? I thought that was just for like when you were in the acid, you know, to protect yourself, but I guess they need the suits 24/7, or is that supposed to be like their skin and there was a, you know, a continuity error? Like, I'm unclear on that. But they see this big pyramid, and so they decide that's probably where Susan went, so they go there. And Susan, and then the doctor, and then Ian, and then Barbara, in that order, they all get trapped by these revolving walls. Inside, they are attacked by Vords, and also they are taken by Arbiton to this room. And so he kills the Vords and brings them to this room where he shows them there is this big machine, and he says that the machine used to control the minds of everyone on the planet Marinus so that everyone was peaceful, but they had to switch the machine off because when the Vords arrived, no one was able to fight back because they weren't able to do violence. And so he wants them to go find the keys that were scattered all over the planet. And I guess these keys they're like microchips. And so he says to, like, you guys go find these keys, and then I'll turn the machine back on, and then the Vords will be affected because they've been on this planet long enough. So he wants them to do that, and they don't want to do that. They have other things to do, and they want to get out of here. But he takes their TARDIS, puts it in a invisible box, I guess, and says he'll only release it once they get the keys. So, oh, and also, like, let me just say that the last people I've sent were my daughter and her friend, and they haven't come back, and I fear they're dead. Like, why do you think this will be different? Anyway, it is because it's the Doctor, but, you know, it's just, it feels like you're like, oh, I'm doing the right thing, violence is wrong, but then you're putting these people in danger, so I don't know about that, Arbiton. So anyway, he sends them away with these wrist things, space travel with a dial, which I believe is what a much more primitive version of what Jack Harkness has later in the series, which the Doctor does not like. He calls it primitive and like space, like junk space travel or something like that. But the first Doctor is pretty impressed by this. The first Doctor really likes these things. Maybe it's just because they travel through space, whereas the other thing can also travel through time. So then they make it to their first location, which is a place called Morphoton, and they think Barbara is hurt because they arrive after her and her bracelet is like bloody, but then they find that she's in this lavish place being like just treated super well by this guy who's kind of in this like sort of like Roman soldier type gear. Like it's not exactly that, but it's kind of reminiscent of that, and all the girls are wearing like these toga dresses, so it's kind of giving like ancient Rome. The girls who are like waiting on them wait till they fall asleep and then place these little rocks on their heads, and then there's a big like a big alarm thing, and with the rocks they all sleep through it, but Barbara's rock falls off of her head, so she wakes up and she realizes something is wrong. But then the like extremely loud alarm puts her to sleep. Like, what happened? Was it like because the alarm is like a hypnosis thing, and was it like she got hypnotized to be put to sleep, but she didn't get the signals to believe the same things as her friend? Or was it that the alarm was so loud she passed out? Like, why did she fall asleep? It's really weird. And then when she wakes up, she realizes that everything, all the lavish things, all the dresses and the delicious food and everything, it's all a lie, and they've all been hypnotized to see all these wonderful things that they want to see, but when she looks, it's just all like rags and chipped cups and disgustingness. The Roman soldier guy, his name is Altos, he comes and takes her away, saying like he's gonna take her to the infirmary, but then she runs away because she realizes that he's obviously gonna do something bad to her, I guess, because she has realized the truth. So she runs and she hides in this little dungeon, and then the girl who had placed the rock on her head that fell off, she's sent to the dungeon as well because, you know, she failed. Barbara tries to unhypnotize the girl whose name is Sabitha, and it takes a little bit, but she gets like unhypnotized enough that she's able to like attack Altos when he comes to take Barbara away. So Barbara runs away and she finds Ian and she's relieved, but they take her to the like bosses of the place because they've been now hypnotized to respond to their orders, which were to bring her there. And the bosses are these like brains in jars. They say that their brains grew too big for their bodies, and they're literally brains in jars with little eye stalks. It's really funny. Anyway, she just starts smashing shit. She just grabs some random thing that she sees and starts smashing. None of the glass cases the brains are in actually smash. The brains are like dying, but none of them are actually like ever touched in any way, so I don't know if it's like she just messed up their life support system or what, but anyway, as soon as they're dead, the entire city of Morphoton, they get unhypnotized, including Ian and the doctor and Susan. So they all go back to continue to search for the next keys, with this new duo, Sabitha and Altos, who were Arbitan's daughter and her friend, and they had gotten stuck there, hypnotized, whatever. Then the crew decide to split up, so the doctor's gonna go on ahead. That's how they explain his absence. So he goes on ahead to the last key, and then the rest of the group, they go on to the next key. The next key is in the Screaming Jungle, and this is another part where Susan acts really weird. Like there's like this horrible noise, and she's like screaming at it to stop. That's normal. Horrible noise freaks me out too, girl. I get you. But then when it stopped, she doesn't even notice it stopped, and she keeps screaming. Then when everyone's like, what's wrong, she doesn't explain, and she just like burst out into tears, and she like can't express herself, and it's like, it was a noise. Like, it was, I don't know, I feel like you take a second to compose yourself after having the panic attack, and then you say, there was a horrible noise, it just felt evil. That's what she ends up saying, but it takes her like way too long. Like, okay, we're padding out the run time. She's a time lady from Gallifrey. We know that she's like 17 years old in like human terms, but we also know later that like the doctor said at some point, I went when I was a child. I was just 90 years old.
I came here when I was just a kid. 90 years old.
You know, so who knows how old she actually is. But she could be 100 years old, and, you know, like, she could also be 17 years old. Regardless, all the things she's done, all the things she's seen, the Daleks, you know, and running from Gallifrey, and she's, like unable to express that there was a bad noise. You know, it just feels like the character doesn't hold up sometimes. There is a heartbreaking scene where Susan asks, like, how was grandfather when you left him? Because she left early. and she says, "I don't like saying goodbye."
I don't like to say goodbye.
No, I know.
And I don't know, that just broke my heart, because that's something that like later in the like series you hear it multiple times said by the Doctor's closest allies.
Left me like a book on a shelf. Didn't even say goodbye. He doesn't like endings.
And so it feels like, you know, she got that from him, or he got that from her. And it just broke my heart a little bit. Ian and Altos and Sabitha decide to go look for an entrance to this temple thing by going around it, but they don't find an entrance. Barbara finds an entrance where she can go in through some trees, and there's this statue, and she sees the key on top of the statue, so she grabs for it, but then the statue like closes his arms in a hug, and revolves around. A lot of revolving walls in this episode. They grab the key that fell on the ground, but they realize that that's actually a fake key, so the others go on ahead, and Ian stays behind to find the key and Barbara. So he jumps on the statue, and the statue closes and turns around. He enters into the temple, and they realize it's just filled with booby traps. And then Barbara becomes completely helpless for some reason. She gets trapped in a net, and it's not even like a good net. And then there are some spikes coming down from the ceiling, and Ian is in another room, but the door is still open from, like, she could just shimmy out. I feel like the stakes would have been raised if Ian was not in another situation, if he was there with her but the door closed, and he's like banging on the door, and he's like, Barbara, Barbara, and then she can't move, like she can't go anywhere, because like, we don't need the net, just make the door close. And then she's trying to get out, but all the doors are locked and she can't. That would be way more harrowing than her. She's like laying in this net. She's like, ah! It's like so weird. They meet this old man who is the keeper of the key, and he is dying because he got strangled by a plant. And he tells them that the plants are growing at an exponential speed. There's some machine or something is making them grow like super fast. So it seems like they're attacking. Like they say, so the plants are attacking, and Ian's like, yes. Well, I mean, no, Ian, actually the plants aren't attacking. They aren't like, let's kill these guys. They're just plants, so they're growing, and you happen to be where they're growing because they're growing at an exponential speed and you're in their way. Like, are the plants attacking, you know, old buildings when they grow on top of them? Is the moss attacking a rock? Like, no, it's just growing. Anyway, they managed to get the key by figuring out this, like, scientific formula, and they get the key and leave without actually explaining what the chemical is, so it's like a little weird. I don't really understand what that's about. But anyway, they also just leave the corpse of the old man, but what can you do, I guess? Then they arrive in a completely snowed over wasteland. It's freezing cold, and they're getting frostbite, and we see them, you know, it's implied that they walked for a few hours, but then Barbara is so tired. Ian tries to rouse her, but he is so cold that he actually falls into a coma. But this man rescues them, and he takes the key from them that they had from the jungle, and he is kind of weird. Like, right away you can tell something's off about him, but at first he seems nice. He gives them food, and he teaches them how to, like, get rid of the frostbite by slowly warming up their hands. But then when Ian is like, I'm gonna go look for Altos, he's like, okay, well, you have to give me something in return for some furs. So Ian gives him his, dial thing, and the man gives him a bag full of stuff and furs. But then later we find out that the bag is actually full of meat so that wolves will be attracted to them. So he's just intentionally trying to kill Ian and Altos. And Altos left to go find the girls, so when Altos and Ian find each other, they go back to the cabin hoping to get Barbara and then go find the girls because they now know she's in danger. Meanwhile, there's this scene where this mountain guy, he kind of implies he's gonna rape Barbara, but it's not super obvious. When they released the DVD, it was still a low age rating. Like, it wasn't rated like a higher rating because of that scene. Because I feel like if you don't know, you don't know. Like, it's not that obvious. Kind of weird for Doctor Who, though. So, they get back to the cabin, they save Barbara. Well, Barbara kind of saves herself, but then they're knocking on the door, so she lets them in, and then they blackmail him into bringing them into the caverns so that they can find Susan and Sabitha, who had gone into the caverns earlier, and he had seen them and supposedly helped them. So, meanwhile, Sabitha and Susan are in the ice caves, and they've run out of wood for fire, so they go deeper into the ice caves because they don't remember which way they came from, and they cross this rope bridge and they find the key, but it's encased in a block of ice, and there are like soldiers, like not animated soldiers all around them. And then when the group finds the remnants of the fire, they go deeper into the cavern because they have this guy to lead them. They find the rope bridge and they cross it and like reunite with the girls, but while they're busy reuniting, this guy, he like unties the other side of the rope bridge and runs away and is like, you guys are messing with devils, because there's devils in these caves. So he runs away. Well, so they're trapped there, so they decide what they're gonna do is they're gonna like go find some like logs or something that they can put across, and in the meantime they're gonna thaw out the block of ice. So there's this machine that's like directly under the block of ice that they're able to turn on, and when they turn it on, the block of ice starts to thaw so they can get the key. But once the block of ice is thawed, the guards come to life, so they're running for their life across this very wobbly piece of wood, but they make it, and after they make it, they actually go back to that villain's house. They get all their stuff from him that he stole, and then they kill him. Well, they don't kill him. They just let the soldiers kill him. So, oh well. Well, he was trying to kill Susan, so it's fine. Then they leave. They go to the last area where they are going to meet up with the doctor. But first, Ian gets concussed. He gets bonked on the head and framed for murder. So the police chief guy comes in and he's like, "You're a murderer," and everybody else is like, what? And then they finally find the doctor, and the doctor's like, "I will represent you in court. I've studied some of their laws." Like, okay, I don't know that that's how that should work, but whatever floats your boat. They realize that in this society, you're guilty until proven innocent. So they have to prove without a shadow of a doubt that Ian is innocent. So they start looking for the real murderer. They have to trap him by waiting till he gets the key, because that's what he murdered for, was the key. He wanted to sell it because there's only 5, so it's worth a lot of money. Anyway, so him, this other woman, and her husband, and she kills her husband on his command because her husband was gonna reveal everything. They get sent to jail. Everything's good. and the elders of the city give the key to the doctor. Yay. And then Sabitha and Altos aren't there to greet them. They went ahead and they aren't there to greet them. They went in to find Arbiton, but they found he was dead, and there's a Voord called Yartek who's like taken charge. Yartek is waiting for the doctor to get there so he can take the key. So he tries to trick Ian by putting Arbiton's clothes on and saying like, I have a deadly disease, you cannot touch me, you cannot look at me, and then just being like, give me the key. And Ian doesn't fall for it, so he gives the Yartek the fake key. And then when Yartek puts the fake key in the machine, the whole pyramid blows up. So the gang, they rush to get out. And then that's pretty much the end of the episode. But it's a really eventful episode, or series of episodes, I feel like. And like you can tell, there's like not a lot of Voord, so I don't know why they thought that this episode would create buzz around the Voord when there's really not that many scenes with the Voord in it. But they go back to, I guess, some other city with the knowledge that, you know, maybe the machine controlling everyone's minds wasn't actually the best option anyway. So, you know, they can continue with Arbiton's science in a way that's better suited for their society now. And the doctor and his gang go back in the TARDIS and dematerialize away, and the effect is made with the little miniature TARDIS, which is the first time that that was done. It's very obvious, but it's cute as hell. I'm not mad about it. All in all, this episode is just full of twists and turns because every single time they go to a new place, it's a completely new challenge. Even if the way that the group was brought to do this was shitty, like having their ship held hostage, you're still able to empathize with Sabitha because, like, it's not her who did that. She's just trying to help her people. So I think that it's a really good episode. I think that they chose a really good episode as well to rewrite for Hartnell's holiday. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but the fact that they decided to do it this way was a really good idea because you have all these different places and they're not that difficult to make these places because, like, it's a jungle, it's snow, you know, and you don't need to have, like, the doctor be there to be like, well, this is what's happening because it's history, or like, this is what's happening because it's an alien planet, because you have the two who are from there, and you're going all over the planet in search of these keys anyway, so you're bound to be, like, you know, in different climates, and it's all going to be different anyway. I just think it's such an interesting episode, and I don't know why I dreaded it so much when I thought of watching it, but then when I watched it, I actually really enjoyed it. I really enjoy how at the end you have a little murder mystery to tie up everything. Like, it's just so, like, every place they go, there's, like, sort of a theme of, like, being controlled, how the laws should work, and whether it's right to condemn people for actions that you assume they've done. And, like, there's just this overarching theme the whole time where, like, Arbiton is like, I'm gonna get this machine working and then no one will be able to be violent anymore. And the whole sort of theme every episode since then is like, is it okay to control people's minds even if you think it's for the greater good, you know? Morphoton, I don't think the Morphos really thought they were doing anything for the greater good. They were just trying to keep in power. But you kind of see, like, is it just because the people are happy, is it okay that they're being mind controlled? Is it okay that they're being hypnotized for the sake of them being happy when really everything around them is disgusting and dirty rags, but they just see all these nice things? Like, is that okay? And then, you know, I think the the definite answer in this episode is no. And I would argue that as well, that that's not okay. I think that people, artificial happiness, there will always be something in your brain telling you something's wrong, and you won't be able to feel it genuinely. Like, you can tell Sabitha when she comes out of the trance, she, like, immediately is like, oh, I'm so happy that, like, I'm with Altos again. And it's like, you were with Altos, but the whole time they were together, it's just that they were mind-controlled, so they didn't even realize they were together, you know? So there's just a big element of, like, is it okay to, you know, control the actions of the whole group just because a few might stray and do horrible things? Like, it's just a very interesting story, and I just love the way that every part of the story kind of shows you a different facet of that. I think the only part that I would argue doesn't is the jungle. The jungle's kind of just like, leaves, but, you know, in the snowy landscape we have this man who's extremely violent and scary, and then at the same time, you know, you have this idea of, like, is it okay to threaten him? Is it okay to let him die just because, you know, he would have let you die? And it's like, it's complex moral questions. They don't exactly touch on it, but I think that at the end of the day, this is a show that's meant to make you think, and this episode definitely makes me think a lot about, you know, what is okay and not okay when it comes to tamping down violence in society, especially when the violent people tend to be the ones who can gain power very easily. So yeah, I think this episode is really good. I think that if you are on the fence about watching, you know, the old black and white episodes, I would say, you know, the Daleks, and then this one is really good. I would definitely recommend this one if you want to watch something that is just, it's so interesting, because another thing that really interests me about it is that this is an idea that was so science fiction back in the day that it was like, well, yes, it is a moral dilemma, but it's not one that we actually have to face that much. Whereas nowadays, I feel like with the advents of new technologies, we're more and more hearing about, like, downloading things directly into your brain and whatever, and it feels like, you know, what was once completely unimaginable, now it feels kind of definitely more within the realm of possibility. And I just feel that it's very interesting, this whole idea of, you know, is it okay to control people to protect the rest of the people? I don't know. That one, I think you'd need a lot of time to think about and talk about everything around it. I think that you'd have to have a lot of caveats and stuff. My personal opinion is that we shouldn't mind control people. Obviously, people will make their own decisions, but we should have more protections for safeguarding and making sure that people are safe to be around, by checking in with them often. So yeah, that's pretty much my opinion, and that's my opinion about that episode. I think it's really interesting. It makes me think a lot, makes me really ponder. So I hope you liked this episode of Cued, and thank you so much for supporting me through this process of depression. I'm just going through it, but I'm doing my best, and I will see you next time. Bye!